"No, sir, please, this isn't right. You can't put your mouth on my breast. I don't want your wife to find out. Please, respect my wishes." "Oh, come on, Rebecca. Are you still acting like a child? Just trust me, you will enjoy it. I know it's not your first, and we have done this before, so just give it to me, baby." One morning, Mabel woke up early to care for her 2-month-old baby boy, Michael. Michael was a cheerful baby, but he cried loudly whenever he was hungry. That morning, Mabel realized they had run out of baby food and milk. She quickly got dressed and told Rebecca, her house help, to watch over Michael. "I will be back soon," Mabel said as she rushed out of the house. "Michael is still sleeping, so everything should be fine." Mabel didn't think much of it as she left for the nearby supermarket. In her hurry, she forgot to pump some breast milk for Michael, a mistake that would soon lead to an unexpected event. As Mabel was at the store choosing baby food and other supplies, Michael woke up. The tiny baby began to cry, his voice filling the house. Rebecca tried her best to calm him. She rocked Michael in her arms and sang sweet lullabies, but nothing worked. His cries grew louder and louder. Rebecca started to panic. She checked the time, but Mabel wasn't back yet. The baby's face turned red from crying so much. Rebecca's heart ached. "I can't let this poor baby cry like this," she said to herself. In a moment of desperation, Rebecca decided to do something she had never imagined. She unbuttoned her blouse, brought out her breast, and began to nurse Michael. To her relief, Michael stopped crying immediately and began to suckle peacefully. While this was happening, Jonathan, Mabel's husband, arrived home unexpectedly. He had finished work early and decided to check on his wife and baby. As he entered the nursery, he froze. There, in the room, was Rebecca breastfeeding his son. "What is going on here?" Jonathan shouted, his voice filled with shock and anger. Rebecca quickly pulled Michael away and stood up, trembling. "Sir, I'm so sorry," she said, tears filling her eyes. "Madam went to the supermarket, and the baby wouldn't stop crying. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't bear to see him cry so much." Jonathan frowned, still trying to process what he had seen. "You should have waited. This is unacceptable," he said. But then something unexpected happened. Jonathan stared at Michael, who looked calm and happy in Rebecca's arms. He was curious, and without thinking asked, "What does your breast milk even taste like?" Before Rebecca could respond, Jonathan leaned closer and took a small taste of the milk. At that exact moment, Mabel walked into the room. She stopped in her tracks, her shopping bags falling to the floor. "What on earth is going on here?" she gasped, looking at her husband, Rebecca, and the baby. Jonathan tried to explain, but Mabel stood there too shocked to speak. The room fell silent. Mabel's hands trembled as she picked up the shopping bags from the floor. She didn't say a word, her face frozen in shock. She turned and walked to their bedroom, her heart heavy with confusion and anger. Jonathan quickly followed her, leaving Rebecca in the nursery with Michael. As Mabel sat on the bed, Jonathan closed the door behind him. "Mabel, it's not what you think," he said, his voice full of panic. She folded her arms and glared at him. "Oh, really?" "Then what was it, Jonathan? Why would I walk in and see you tasting milk from Rebecca?" Jonathan hesitated, trying to find the right words. "I wasn't doing anything wrong," he began. I thought there was something in her eye, and I was helping her remove it." Mabel blinked, confused. "From her eyes," she repeated, unsure whether to believe him. "Yes, darling," Jonathan said quickly. "When I walked into the room, I saw the baby crying, and Rebecca looked so stressed. There was something in her eye, so I leaned in to help her. That's all." Mabel took a deep breath and nodded slowly. "Okay," she said, though a part of her still felt uneasy. She wanted to trust Jonathan, but the image of him and Rebecca lingered in her mind. For the next few days, Mabel tried to push the thoughts away and focus on her baby. Rebecca continued to help with Michael, and Jonathan behaved as if everything was normal. But soon, Mabel began to notice something strange. Every night when Mabel woke up to check on Michael, Jonathan wasn't in bed. At first, she thought maybe he was in the living room or using the bathroom. But it happened so often that she started to wonder. One night, curiosity got the best of her. She waited until late, pretending to be asleep. When Jonathan quietly slipped out of bed, Mabel opened her eyes. She watched as he tiptoed out of the room, closing the door softly behind him. Mabel's heart raced. Where is he going? She thought. Determined to find out, she got out of bed and tiptoed after him. She followed him down the hall, her bare feet making no sound on the cool tiles. Jonathan stopped in front of Rebecca's room. He glanced around, then slipped inside. Mabel's breath caught in her throat. No, this can't be happening, she whispered. She hesitated for a moment, then crept closer. The door was slightly ajar and she peeked inside. What she saw made her freeze. Jonathan was in bed with Rebecca. They were lying close together, whispering and laughing softly. Mabel felt like her world had shattered into a million pieces. Her hands shook and her eyes filled with tears. She wanted to burst into the room and scream, but her legs felt like they were glued to the floor. After a few moments, Mabel quietly stepped back and returned to her room. She sat on the bed, staring at the wall, her mind racing. How could he do this to me, she thought. How long has this been going on? Mabel didn't sleep that night. She stayed awake, thinking about what she had seen and what she should do next. Should she confront Jonathan? Should she send Rebecca away? Or should she keep quiet for the sake of her baby? Morning came, but Mabel's heart was heavy. She knew she could not ignore what she had seen. Something had to be done. After Jonathan left the house, Mabel couldn't hold back her emotions any longer. She marched straight to Rebecca's room, her heart heavy with anger and confusion. Rebecca, we need to talk, Mabel said firmly, standing at the doorway. Rebecca looked up from where she sat on the bed, her hands trembling. She knew this moment would come. Madam, I'm so sorry, she began, her voice soft and shaky. Sorry for what? Mabel asked, crossing her arms. What's going on between you and my husband? I want the truth. Rebecca burst into tears, unable to hold it in any longer. Madam, it's not my fault. I swear it's not. It's your husband. Ever since I carried Michael for you, he hasn't let me rest. Mabel's face turned pale. She took a step closer, her voice low and sharp. What do you mean by that? Be clear, Rebecca. After Jonathan left the house, Mabel couldn't hold back her emotions any longer. She marched straight to Rebecca's room, her heart heavy with anger and confusion. Rebecca, we need to talk, Mabel said firmly, standing at the doorway. Rebecca looked up from where she sat on the bed, her hands trembling. She knew this moment would come. Madam, I'm so sorry, she began, her voice soft and shaky. Sorry for what? Mabel asked, crossing her arms. What's going on between you and my husband? I want the truth. Rebecca burst into tears, unable to hold it in any longer. Madam, it's not my fault. I swear it's not. It's your husband. Ever since I carried Michael for you, he hasn't let me rest. Mabel's face turned pale. She took a step closer. What do you mean by that? Be clear, Rebecca. Rebecca took a deep breath and finally spoke. Madam, you know I agreed to carry Michael because your womb was damaged, and you couldn't have children, she began. I did it because you and your husband promised to treat me with respect. But ever since Michael was born, Olga has been bothering me. He keeps coming to me, saying I'm the sweetest woman he has ever seen. He won't stop. Mabel's heart sank as she listened. Her hands trembled at her sides. I told Jonathan we should let you go after Michael was born, but he refused. Now I see why. Rebecca looked down, tears streaming down her face. Madam, I tried to stop him. I told him it wasn't right, but he wouldn't listen. Please believe me, I didn't ask for this. Mabel shook her head, struggling to hold back her tears. I know you are Michael's biological mother. But we paid you for this. We gave you a home and everything you needed. You promised that once Michael was born, you'd let me be his mother. And now my marriage is falling apart because of this. Rebecca remained silent, unable to defend herself. Mabel took a deep breath. You can't stay here anymore. I can't live in the same house as you. It's not possible. You have to leave. Rebecca's head shot up, panic flashing in her eyes. Madam, please don't send me away. Where will I go? And what about Michael? He's my son too. Enough, Mabel snapped. You must leave. I'll wait for Jonathan to come home and we'll settle this tonight. That evening, when Jonathan returned from work, he found Mabel waiting for him in the living room. Her face was stern, her arms crossed tightly across her chest. Mabel, baby, what's wrong? Jonathan asked, sensing the tension. She stood up and faced him. Rebecca told me everything. She told me how you have been sleeping with her, telling her sweet things. How could you do this to me, Jonathan? After everything we have been through to have Michael. Jonathan's was shocked. Mabel, I can explain. No, Mabel interrupted. I don't want to hear excuses. I can't lose my marriage because of a maid. She has to leave this house, now. Jonathan sighed deeply, rubbing his forehead. Fine, he said. If that's what you want, she will leave. Mabel nodded sharply. Good, go and tell her right now. Jonathan sighed heavily as he walked down the hallway toward Rebecca's room. His mind raced with conflicting thoughts, but he knew he had to face her. When he got to the door, he knocked softly before stepping inside. Rebecca looked up, her face still puffy from crying. She could sense that this was the end of the road. Rebecca, Jonathan began, my wife knows everything now. You need to leave the house. You can't stay here anymore. Rebecca's eyes widened and she shook her head. What? No, sir, I can't leave. This is my home now, and Michael is my son. Jonathan rubbed his temples in frustration. Rebecca, please, don't make this harder than it needs to be. I will give you money, enough to start over. 20 million naira. You can live comfortably wherever you choose, but you can't stay here anymore. Rebecca stood up. No, sir. I'm not leaving without Michael. He is my son, my flesh and blood. I carried him for 9 months. How can you expect me to just walk away from him? Jonathan felt his chest tighten. Rebecca, you know Michael is my son, and Mabel and I love him too. We gave you everything you needed to bring him into this world. You agreed that once he was born, he would be ours. Why are you doing this to me? I love you and our son. Please just do this for me. I only agreed because I thought you both were good people. But now I see the truth. I won't abandon my child, not for any amount of money. Jonathan's voice softened as he stepped closer. Rebecca, you know I care about you. I didn't want things to turn out like this. But please, don't destroy my marriage. You leaving is the only solution. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. You say you care, but all you've done is make my life difficult. Now you want to throw me out like trash? No, sir. If I leave this house, Michael is coming with me. Jonathan froze, speechless. He hadn't expected her to stand her ground so firmly. For a moment, he considered her words, but he knew Mabel would never agree. You don't understand, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. I can't let that happen. Rebecca crossed her arms, her jaw set. Then we have nothing more to talk about, sir. If you want me to leave, I'm taking my son. End of discussion. Jonathan stared at her, his mind racing. He knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Mabel sat in the living room with her phone pressed to her ear, her hands shaking. She had just called her best friend, Tina, to tell her everything that was happening. Tina, I don't know what to do. Rebecca is refusing to leave. She even said she won't go unless she takes Michael with her. Tina's voice on the other end was calm but firm. Mabel, you can't let her win. Michael is your son. You carried him in your heart, even if you didn't carry him in your womb. That maid has no right to take him away. But how do I stop her? Mabel asked. Tina's next words were cold. You have to get rid of her, Mabel, permanently. If Rebecca is gone, there will be no one to fight you for Michael. You will have your family back. Mabel gasped. What do you mean, Tina? You know what I mean, Tina replied. Poison her. Slip something into her food or drink. She won't see it coming. It's the only way to protect your family. Mabel was silent for a moment, her heart pounding. The thought of harming someone terrified her, but the fear of losing Michael was greater. I will do it, she said finally. I will poison her. What Mabel didn't realize was that Rebecca had been standing just outside the door, listening to the entire conversation. Her eyes widened in shock and fear as she heard Mabel's plan. She covered her mouth with her hand, trying to stay quiet. That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. Her mind was racing and her heart was heavy. She looked at Michael as he slept peacefully in his crib. She knew she couldn't wait any longer. She had to leave, or both she and her son could be in danger. The next morning, Mabel left for the market as usual. Before she walked out the door, she smiled at Rebecca, trying to act normal. Take good care of Michael while I'm gone, Mabel said. Rebecca nodded, forcing a smile. Yes, madam. Though her heart was racing, as soon as Mabel was out of sight, Rebecca sprang into action. She packed a small bag with her belongings and some clothes for Michael. She carefully wrapped him in a blanket and held him close to her chest. Rebecca tiptoed through the house, making sure not to make any noise. She avoided the front door, knowing the neighbors might see her. Instead, she slipped out through the back gate and started walking as fast as she could. She didn't stop until she reached the main road, where she flagged down a passing bus. She got on and held Michael tightly, her eyes scanning the area to make sure no one was following her. The bus drove for hours, taking her far away from the house, from Mabel, and from everything she had known. Rebecca didn't care where the bus was going. All she wanted was to keep her son safe. Finally, the bus stopped in a small, quiet town. Rebecca got off and looked around. It was a peaceful place, surrounded by trees and hills. She decided this would be their new home. Rebecca found a small, cheap room to rent and settled in with Michael. She looked at her son, who smiled up at her, unaware of the danger they had just escaped. "Don't worry, my son. We're safe now. I will protect you no matter what." Back at home, life became miserable for Jonathan. Ever since Rebecca ran away with Michael, Mabel had changed completely. She was no longer the calm and caring wife he once knew. Instead, she became angry and bitter, and she took all her frustration out on him. "Useless man," Mabel would shout whenever Jonathan tried to talk to her. "You're nothing but a cheat and a liar. How dare you bring shame to me in my own house?" Jonathan would lower his head and stay quiet. He didn't have the courage to argue back. He knew Mabel had all the power. Her father owned the company where Jonathan worked, and if he upset her, she could easily tell her father to fire him. Each day, Jonathan went to work tired and stressed. When he got home, instead of finding peace, he would find Mabel waiting for him with a list of chores to do. "Go and wash the dishes," Mabel snapped one evening as he walked through the door, still wearing his office clothes. "But I just got home," Jonathan said. "Don't you dare talk back to me." Mabel interrupted. "You live in my house and work in my father's company. If you don't like it, you can leave." Jonathan sighed heavily and went to the kitchen to do the dishes. After that, Mabel gave him more tasks. Sweep the floor, take out the trash, clean the bathroom. By the time Jonathan finished everything, it was almost midnight. He was exhausted, but he didn't dare complain. He knew Mabel wasn't joking about her threats. At night, Jonathan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. His body ached from the day's work, and his mind was filled with regret. He thought about how everything had gone wrong. Rebecca was gone with Michael, and now Mabel treated him like a servant. He wondered how long he could keep living like this. Jonathan felt trapped, but he didn't know what to do. In the small, quiet town where Rebecca had found refuge, life was far from easy. She didn't have much, but she was determined to survive and take care of her son, Michael. Every morning, Rebecca woke up early and carried Michael on her back with a cloth tied around her waist. She walked from street to street, hawking fruits, vegetables, and other small items she could afford to buy in bulk. "Fresh oranges, sweet bananas," she called out, her voice echoing through the dusty streets. People would stop to buy from her, and she would smile even though her feet ached and the sun beat down on her back. Michael, now a lively toddler, would sometimes babble on her back or tug at her scarf. Rebecca would laugh softly and whisper, "Don't worry, my son. Mama is working hard for us. One day, life will be better." At the end of each day, Rebecca counted her earnings. The money was never much, but she carefully set some aside. She had a dream: to open a sewing shop. Before coming to work for Jonathan and Mabel, Rebecca had learned how to sew. She was good at it, and she knew it could give her and Michael a better life. Months turned into years, and Rebecca's hard work began to pay off. She saved enough money to rent a small shop in the marketplace. With the little she had left, she bought a second-hand sewing machine and some fabric. She painted a wooden sign that read, "Rebecca's Sewing Corner." Rebecca's sewing skills quickly caught the attention of the townspeople. At first, it was just local women who brought their clothes to her for mending or simple designs. But soon, word spread about how talented she was. Wealthy people from neighboring towns started visiting her shop, asking her to make dresses for weddings and special occasions. Meanwhile, back in the city, Jonathan was a broken man. Life with Mabel had become unbearable. She insulted him daily, treated him like a servant, and constantly reminded him of how she had the power to destroy him. But what pained Jonathan the most was the loss of his son. He couldn't stop thinking about Michael. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his son's face. He missed the sound of his laughter and the way he smiled up at him. Jonathan blamed himself for everything that had gone wrong. Jonathan spent months searching for Rebecca and Michael. He visited every nearby town, asked people if they had seen a young woman with a child, and even offered rewards for information. But no one could help him. She left no trace, Jonathan muttered to himself one evening as he sat alone in his car, staring at a picture of Michael on his phone. No number to call, no address to track. How could she just disappear like that? Despite his efforts, it seemed like Rebecca and Michael had vanished into thin air. Jonathan felt a deep ache in his chest. He had lost his son, and with each passing day, it seemed less likely that he would ever find him. Back in the small town, Rebecca looked around her shop with pride. She had worked so hard to get here, and now she could provide a better life for Michael. Her son, now 5 years old, ran into the shop, laughing and holding a toy car that one of Rebecca's customers had given him. 12 years had passed, and life had changed for Rebecca and Michael. They now lived in a big city, far from the small town where they had started their new life. Michael was no longer a little boy. He was now a tall, handsome teenager with a bright smile that could light up a room. Rebecca had worked hard all these years, pouring her heart into her sewing business, which had grown into a well-known brand. She now owned a large boutique in the city with many employees working for her. But her greatest pride wasn't her business. It was her son, Michael. One sunny afternoon, Michael came running into their home after school, his face glowing with excitement. "Mama! Mama!" he called out, dropping his school bag on the floor. Rebecca hurried out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "What is it, Michael? Why are you shouting?" she asked, though she couldn't help smiling at his excitement. "Mama, guess what?" Michael said, grinning from ear to ear. Rebecca laughed. "I don't know, my son. Tell me." "I've been given a scholarship," Michael said, his voice full of joy. "They said I can study at any university I choose." Rebecca froze for a moment, her hands flying to her mouth. "A scholarship?" she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "Yes, Mama," Michael said, his voice rising with excitement. "It's a full scholarship. I can study medicine, just like I've always dreamed." Rebecca pulled him into a tight hug, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, my son, God has blessed us. You are a hard-working and brilliant boy. I'm so proud of you." That night, Rebecca cooked Michael's favorite meal, and they celebrated together, laughing and talking about his future. The years flew by as Michael went off to university to study medicine. He worked hard, just like his mother had taught him, and soon he became one of the top students in his class. Rebecca visited him whenever she could, bringing him food and cheering him on. "Mama, one day I will make you proud," Michael would say whenever she came to see him. "You already make me proud every single day," Rebecca replied, her eyes shining with love. After many years of studying, Michael graduated from medical school with honors. Rebecca couldn't stop crying during the graduation ceremony as she watched him walk across the stage to receive his degree. "My son, a doctor," she whispered to herself, her heart swelling with pride. "God, thank you for this blessing." But Michael didn't stop there. He worked hard and saved his earnings, determined to achieve even more. Years later, he opened his very own hospital in the heart of the city. It was a grand building with shiny glass windows and a beautiful sign that read, "Dr. Michael's Specialist Hospital." Rebecca stood outside the hospital on its opening day, looking up at the sign with tears in her eyes. She thought about all the struggles they had faced, from the days of hawking on the streets to this moment. Michael walked over and put his arm around her. "This hospital is as much yours as it is mine, Mama," he said softly. "You sacrificed everything for me. Without you, I wouldn't be here today." Rebecca smiled through her tears. "You are my joy, Michael. Seeing you succeed is all I have ever wanted. I'm so proud of you." The opening ceremony was a big event. People from all over the city came to see the hospital and meet the young doctor who had already made a name for himself. Rebecca watched proudly as Michael greeted guests, shaking hands and smiling. Later that night, when they were alone, Rebecca hugged her son tightly. "Michael, you have given me more joy than I ever dreamed of. I know your future will is bright. And you will touch so many lives with your work. Michael smiled. And I'll always take care of you, Mama. Just like you took care of me. Meanwhile, Mabel's behavior grew worse with each passing year. She no longer cared about her marriage and began sleeping with younger men. At first, Jonathan didn't believe it when he heard rumors, but soon she started bringing the men into their home openly. Jonathan would come home from work and find strange young men in the living room, laughing and acting like they owned the place. Mabel didn't even try to hide it. "If you don't like it, you can leave," she snapped one evening when Jonathan confronted her. "Mabel, this is our home. You're embarrassing me," he said, his voice shaking with frustration. "My home," Mabel corrected him coldly. "Don't forget, Jonathan, my father owns this house, just like he owns the company you work for. If you don't keep quiet, I will make sure you lose your job and end up on the streets." Jonathan knew she wasn't bluffing. Her father had the power to fire him, and he couldn't afford to lose his job. So he stayed silent and endured the humiliation. Over time, Mabel's insults grew worse. She called him useless, weak, and a failure. She stopped pretending to care about the marriage and treated Jonathan like a burden. One day, after a particularly heated argument, Mabel finally had enough. "Get out of my house," she screamed, pointing toward the door. "Mabel, where do you expect me to go?" Jonathan pleaded, his voice breaking. "I don't care," she said coldly. "You're worthless to me. You can't even stand up for yourself. Leave, Jonathan, and don't come back." Jonathan was left with no choice. He packed a small bag and left the house he had called home for years. True to her threat, Mabel called her father, and Jonathan was fired from his job. Now homeless and jobless, Jonathan wandered the streets, looking for work. He started doing laborer's work at construction sites, carrying heavy loads under the hot sun. At night, he slept in uncompleted buildings, with only his bag as a pillow. The once proud man was now a shadow of himself, thin and tired, with no hope in his eyes. One day, Michael, now a successful doctor, visited the site of a new hospital he was building. He walked around, inspecting the work and giving instructions to the site supervisor. As he was talking, his eyes fell on an older man struggling to carry a heavy bag of cement. "Who is that?" Michael asked, pointing at the man. "That's one of the workers," the supervisor replied. Michael frowned. "Why would you hire someone so old and weak? Can't you see he's struggling? This is a construction site, not a charity." Jonathan, overhearing the conversation, put the bag of cement down and approached Michael. He wiped the sweat from his face with a torn handkerchief and said softly, "Please, sir, don't blame him. I'm not complaining. This work puts food on my table." Michael looked at the man, surprised by his calmness. He noticed the lines of exhaustion on his face and the way his hands trembled slightly. Something about the man's voice and expression made Michael feel pity, but he didn't say anything else. That evening, when Michael got home, he told Rebecca about the man he had met at the construction site. "Mama, I saw someone today who broke my heart," he said as they sat down for dinner. Rebecca looked up, concerned. "What happened?" "There's this old man working at the site," Michael said, his voice filled with emotion. "He looked so tired, but he didn't complain. He said he's doing it to survive. I can't stop thinking about him, Mama. He reminds me of what you always told me, about how hard life can be for some people." Rebecca nodded thoughtfully. "Life isn't easy for everyone, my son, but if you feel so strongly, why don't you help him?" Michael raised an eyebrow. "Help him? How?" Rebecca smiled gently. "Why don't you offer him a better job? We could use a security guard at the house. He can help us with opening the gate and keeping an eye on the place. That way, he won't have to do such hard work anymore." Michael thought about it for a moment and nodded. "That's a good idea, Mama. I'll talk to him tomorrow." Rebecca patted his hand. "You have a good heart, Michael. God will bless you for your kindness." Michael felt a sense of relief as he imagined giving the man a chance at a better life. The next day, Michael went to the construction site early. As he walked through the dusty grounds, he spotted Jonathan carrying a heavy load, his back hunched and sweat dripping down his face. Michael approached him with a kind smile. "Good morning, sir," he said. Jonathan straightened up, wiping his face with a ragged handkerchief. "Good morning, young man." I have been thinking about what you said yesterday, Michael began. I don't think you should be working here anymore. This job is too hard, and you deserve something better. Jonathan looked at him in surprise. What do you mean? Sir. I have a job for you, Michael explained. My family needs a security guard at our home. It's an easier job than this, and it will pay better. You will have a roof over your head and food to eat. Jonathan's mouth fell open. For a moment he couldn't speak. You're offering me a job? He asked, his voice trembling. Yes, Michael said with a smile. If you're interested, you can come home with me today and start right away. Jonathan nodded quickly, unable to hide his gratitude. Thank you, sir. I will take the job. God bless you. When they arrived at Michael's house, Rebecca was in the living room sewing. As soon as Jonathan stepped inside, her face froze. She stood up slowly, her hands trembling. Jonathan, she whispered, her voice filled with shock. Jonathan looked up and his face turned pale. Rebecca, he said, his voice shaking. Michael looked between them, confused. Mama, do you know him? Rebecca nodded, her voice trembling. Yes, Michael, this is your father. Michael's eyes widened in disbelief. What? My father. Rebecca sat down, shaking her head in amazement. I can't believe this. After all these years, Jonathan, where have you been? How did this happen? Jonathan sighed heavily and lowered his head. Life hasn't been kind to me, Rebecca. After you left, everything fell apart. Mabel made my life unbearable. She threw me out of the house, and her father fired me. I've been struggling ever since, working odd jobs and living wherever I can find shelter. Rebecca's heart sank as she listened to his story. She had always wondered what became of Jonathan after she left, but she never imagined it would be this bad. I didn't know, she said softly. I never wanted this for you, Jonathan. Michael sat down beside Rebecca, his mind racing. So you are my father? He asked, his voice filled with emotion. And you never bothered to look for me? Jonathan nodded. Yes, Michael, I've thought about you every single day. I prayed I would see you again, but I didn't know how to find you. I'm so sorry for everything that happened. I failed you and your mother. Michael was silent for a moment. Then he stood up and said, We can't change the past, but we can move forward. You're part of this family now, and we will figure it out together. Rebecca wiped her tears and nodded. Yes, Jonathan, you're welcome here. It's time to rebuild what we lost. Meanwhile, Mabel's life was spiraling out of control. After Jonathan left, she became reckless and careless. She continued to bring younger men into her home, even when her father began hearing rumors about her behavior. One day, one of her sugar boys convinced her to steal money from her father's company. Don't worry, babe, he said with a sly grin. It's just a small amount. Your father won't even notice. But Mabel's father did notice. When he discovered the missing funds, he summoned her to his office immediately. Mabel, how could you do this to me? I trusted you, and you've betrayed me. Father, it's not what you think, Mabel stammered, trying to defend herself. Don't lie to me, he shouted. I have had enough of your scandals. You have embarrassed this family for the last time. Get out of my house and my company. You are on your own now. Stripped of everything, her home, her job, and her father's support, Mabel was left with nothing. Her sugar boys abandoned her once her money was gone. She began wandering the streets, drinking heavily to escape her pain. One evening, she sat alone on a park bench, clutching a nearly empty bottle of alcohol. Tears streamed down her face as she thought about everything she had lost. I had it all, she whispered to herself, and I threw it away. Her once beautiful face was now tired and worn, and she looked like a shadow of her former self. People who passed her didn't recognize the proud and wealthy woman she used to be. Mabel was now consumed by regret, wishing she could go back and make different choices. But it was too late. Her decisions had led her down a path of loneliness and despair, and she was left with nothing but the pain of her mistakes. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.